What's going on, TAP? This is Play Beat chillin'. I got my man Rev with me. What's going on, Rev? How you doing?
Hey, what's going on, everybody? It is I, your boy Sir Rev, here with Play Beat. We got a in-studio co-host today, CJ, who we've talked to a couple times before. We brought him in because we have a very special guest that I got introduced through our good friend, Dr. Heather Lee, of Exploration Paranormal in Las Vegas, Nevada. We have Kenneth Torres, who does work with the Warren Legacy Foundation in the Bay Area here in California. So Kenneth, welcome to the show. Hey. Thank you for joining us. And can you just please just talk a little bit about your lengthy experience in the paranormal field and everything else that you've been involved in?
Thanks. First of all, I want to say it's an honor. Thank you for having me on your show. I'm just a regular guy, nobody, you know what I mean? And
as the pops in the background start moving by themselves.
Yeah. I appreciate it. I was humbled when you were like, oh, somebody wants to interview me. I go, oh shit, okay, well, no, why not?
Hey, we were humbled too. We're like, someone wants to be on the show. Nice.
I was like, I go, wow, somebody wants to talk to me other than my wife, my girlfriend. Okay. Yeah.
Nice.
So my name is Kenneth Torres. Born and raised in New York and New Jersey, Puerto Rican and Italian. And, I was born like I said, I was born and raised back east. And so, I'm a regional director with the Warren Legacy Foundation for Paranormal Research. I work with the grandson of Etta Lorraine Warren, Chris McKinnell. Mm-hmm. And so what we do in the foundation is we carry on the work of Etta Lorraine Warren on a broader level. Okay. It was Lorraine's dream to have this foundation started before her passing, years before she was gone. Because let's be honest, everyone knows of Nespra, but not everybody knows where New England is at. You can ask many people out here, they're like, where's New England? Well, I don't know. So the idea was...
The clam chowder? No.
Yeah. I mean, the clam chowder. I mean, that's great. So the idea was to say, you know what, we need to start something. And so Chris McKinnell and Lorraine Warren, they started the Warren Legacy Foundation for Paranormal Research. And so we are a unilateral paranormal organization. We are worldwide. We have regional directors and researchers in Australia, New Zealand, all of the United States, Europe, the United Kingdom. We've got over 60, 70 researchers. On my team alone, we actually have a board-certified clinical psychologist that practices and helps on our cases. We also have a physical doctor, and so she helps out with assessments as well. So essentially what we're doing is we work with the darker cases. We try to, first of all, we try to debunk, so to speak, what's going on, especially throughout this whole COVID thing. There's been a lot of reports of alleged activity, paranormal activity. Yeah. And so, we try to go by the books and we do things a certain way. We get pretty invasive when we ask you some questions. We have a questionnaire. It's about 7-8 pages long. We ask you everything from drug abuse, physical abuse. We require that you give us a release of information from your medical doctor, that type of stuff. And so that's just the basis of the foundation. The idea is just to help the public and teach the public about the paranormal. We are an education organization.
So more educational, like do you do like services where you try to let's say, for instance, remedy certain situations or spirits away from certain homes or objects or certain individuals?
Yes. I mean, we basically do all of that. So, but the primary focus is to keep the integrity of this field and educate people on how to deal with the paranormal in general. There is a big consensus that there's many people that they don't understand what's going on. And so we feel that if we can help educate the public and these people, I think it'll be easier for them just to rectify that situation. Because let's be honest, I would say maybe 80 to 90% of our cases, alleged cases or hauntings, it's more psychological stuff. You know what I mean? Yes, it's that small percentage that we deal with that we can't explain. That's when we're like, oh shit, okay, what do we got here? We're seeing things that are flying, and we're seeing things that are levitating. We're on camera, and there's this 6'3" dude, Nordic Viking dude, He got pushed away by.
Yeah, that Thor.
Yeah. He's like he got pushed away by his sister. That's like 4'9", 110 pounds off the chair, flying across the room. Wow. And we're like, that's not normal. And so that's some of the stuff. That's some of the stuff we deal with. And my background essentially. As mentioned, I'm a Marine Corps veteran. I was in the Marine Corps from 03 to 06.
Nice. Thank you for your service. Appreciate it, man.
Oh, not a problem. Most of the time it's just, I can't remember half my service. But I did my time, pretty short story. I did 3 years, got injured, suffered some trauma, and it took me a long time to recover. I got out, and my first year I had like 13 jobs. And so one of the things that I deal with on the side is, besides the paranormal, I deal with different veterans organizations. Nice. I work with the Wounded Warrior Project. I work for this. I'm a co-captain for PGA Hope. I work with Hope for the Warriors, Vets for Warriors, Weed for Warriors, Santa Cruz Veterans Alliance. There's Project Serve. There is Project One More Wave, which is near and dear to my heart. It's a program for veterans who are in the Santa Cruz, San Diego area, East Coast area. You go to this website, and one of our founders, Rob Garnett, he'll hook you up with free surf equipment so you can get out there and do water therapy. Oh, nice. The reason why I say these things too is just I want people to know that my life just solely isn't the paranormal. Yeah. Because the problem with this is if you immerse yourself too much into the paranormal and you don't give yourself time to breathe, man, this will just consume you up, and it will eat you up, and it will mess with you. And so if you're not good for your clients, then what good are you in general? Yeah, so you got to have a good mind. So and so that's how I feel, And so, with that being said, I grew up, with a life of hauntings. Growing up in New Jersey, haunted area Paterson, New Jersey. So Paterson, New Jersey, quick history, was founded by Alexander Hamilton. It is the original silk city where all the silk in the world was made, but also has natural waterfalls. So the natural waterfalls in that area, you actually might have seen this episode. On the first Sopranos episode, there was a bridge where the guy got clapped. Yeah, that's Paterson, New Jersey. And so with that area there, there's a waterfall. And so that waterfall powers the city. And so the thought behind that is when you have a lot of water, you have a lot of energy, you're going to have a lot of different activity. And so I grew up in a place where it was scary, man. It was scary. And I'm going to get into some nitty-gritty stuff if you guys want to hear about that.
Yeah, please. That's why we're here.
I already got the soundtrack going in the background. All right,
you got the soundtrack. I mean, we're talking like brujas and shit. But on a serious note, so this was maybe 1996. My stepmother, my dad, and we moved into this new apartment in Paterson, New Jersey. Actually, it was more like a divided complex. So it was a house divided into different floors. Okay. And so the first floor had, their own set of neighbors, and you walk into the hallway and we go upstairs, and that's where we lived. And so the general setup of this house was pretty interesting. So you walk up, you walk in, the kitchen is there. There's a room to the right, and there's a back door to the backyard. You got to take the stairs down. And then coming into the house, you walk into the right, there's a hallway. And in the hallway, there's stairs that go up. And there's 2 rooms up there. And so this all started when about maybe like 2 or 3 weeks after we moved in. My dad and I and my little sister, we were outside riding our bikes. And so we looked up in the house and we saw a little girl staring out the window.
No way.
Yeah, yes way. Yes way. See way. And so we looked up and we're like, hey, Dad, there's somebody up there. And I go, who's that? And he's like, well, I'm paraphrasing because it was so long, but it was kind of like, yeah, I don't think she's supposed to be there. We don't know who that is. So we go upstairs and we look, and my dad walks in. I follow him behind him, and there's nobody there. So when we walk up, right, he goes to the living room and he goes back up to the room. And then as soon as he's walking up these stairs, the other tricycle that my little sister had flew down the stairs, and just like it fell on him. And this is about 10 stairs going up, and maybe like at a 45-degree angle, and he fell back and he clocked his head. And so we're like, whoa, that's crazy. And so there is no way that bike could have just casually rolled down the stairs, because when you walk up the stairs, there's a barrier there. and it was put away in the back corner on a rack. So it would have just had to get out 10, 15 feet, roll around the corner by itself, and just decide to go down the stairs by itself. Okay, cool. So we think nothing of it. All right. So next day, a few days later, we're watching TV. Actually, we were watching it. With the original. With Tim Curry.
It's Tim Curry.
Tim Curry. We all float down here. So we're watching TV. It's like where I'm at right now. There's the couch here. My dad is here. My little sister's, on the floor. We're watching TV. So, but as you're watching TV, you can see outside to the kitchen. And so, we're watching TV, and all of a sudden, we see a little girl walk by that looks like my sister.
Oh, snap.
Yeah, and we're like, hey, sis. Yeah, and we're like, hey, sis, you're supposed to be over here. What are you doing over here? And my little sister's like, I'm right down here. And my dad and I both look. She was literally sitting in front of us. And so this is where stuff starts getting weird, man. So my dad walks out, old school Catholic and all that stuff. And, you walk in, there's a washer and dryer there. All of a sudden, there is a cross upside down inside a candle of Jesus Christ. And it was broken. Snap. Yeah, so
damn, that's kind of cool, though. I mean,
at that time it is kind of cool. But then, what ended up happening was that things kind of got worse. So we had a dog. His name was Suki. He was a Japanese Akita, lovable boy. For some reason, one day we came home and he wasn't at the house. He was missing. The back door was open all the way downstairs to the backyard. And so we shared the backyard with the neighbors, but everything was fenced in. And so as we're looking for him, we don't find him. It's been like 1 or 2 days. We don't find him. We call animal control, nothing. A few days later, I went downstairs with my dad. We're going to play it. And I'm sorry, if you're sensitive to animals getting hurt, I would say turn away right now. So what ended up happening is we actually saw our dog. He was crucified to the wall. And he was gutted open.
No way, dang.
Yes way. And so we found our dog Zuki. That was savage. And so we're like, honestly, my dad was like, yeah, I mean, that's disturbing. You know what I mean? That's disturbing. And I'm an animal lover too. I'm the type of guy that, if the person gets hurt in the movie, I don't care. But once the animal's gone, I'm all Yoda. I'm all Yoda and shit. Like,
yeah, that's my Suki. Take my sister, not my Suki.
Take my sister. Take my sister, puto. But
hey, stop touching my fucking dog over here.
Yeah. So so that was an eye-opening experience, man. And so that kind of set the tone for what was happening.
Damn.
So that would be the genesis of where you began believing in the paranormal, or was there something that led up to that, or was it just all of a sudden like a bomb dropping and this was that situation?
No. So I'm gonna get personal with you guys, and I hardly ever do this, but because you guys are fucking cool. Look, I grew up in a broken home. My mother, was never there for me. My mother actually was a trick in the streets of New York. Okay. My grandfather, her father used to pimp her out, raped her, pimped her out, gave her HIV. And so when I grew up, she left me in a trash can. Wow. And she literally left me in a trash can. And so my grandmother had to raise me. But, I was a drug baby. I was premature. I had some issues. And so there was always this thing that I would wake up at night, like something was chasing me. If you could imagine like the Indiana Jones movie, The Raiders of the Lost Ark, where the ball is rolling, right? Just imagine something like that, invisible, chasing you. And I would get that up until I was 9 years old. I would sleepwalk in the middle of the night. I would go out into the middle of the street in the middle of the night. And so, at that time, my grandmother became Christian Pentecostal, you know what I mean? So we started going to church. And once we started going to church, I remember one time she was like, hey, you were laying down, but your eyes started glowing. And I was like, what? I was like, what are you talking about glowing? Like, remember the old school Power Rangers? Like when, they would transform and their eyes would glow and, the robots would glow. So she said it was something like that. And I don't remember, but I do know that they took me to the church and they prayed for me and I got liberated. I had some type of oppression with me. I was a drug baby, you know what I mean? I had a lot of things that were wrong with me. There were some issues growing up. And, my mother was always in and out of my life. So I always had that trauma. And so for me, it was feeling that I was different. Not only that, though, my grandmother from my mom's side in New York, back in the Bronx, she was a bruja. She was a high priestess in Santeria. So her, being all that stuff, I would see the stuff she would do. My aunt at the time, too, it'd be crazy. Like at that time, I'd be in my apartment, my aunt, I remember this like at 3 or 4 years old. I'd be in the in the apartment with my aunt, and we'd be in the room, and all of a sudden we walk out, and there's a freaking river in the middle of the living room, like a river. Now, I don't know if it was just childhood imagination or they were tripping me out on something, but there would be like weird stuff that would happen like that.
Damn, that's savage.
And then I remember too, even with my aunt, we don't talk anymore, but like you could ask her, and that's one thing we will always come to terms with. My grandmother was an evil woman. She was the type of woman that, people would fly from all over the place to pay her for her services. And I remember one time she told me, there's something about you that's special. You have a magic inside of you, blah, blah, blah. I don't remember, you know what I mean? Something along those lines. But that's where I kind of knew that the paranormal was always part of my life.
Right.
So then skip forward maybe 7-8 years, going back to the store with my dad. So at that point in time, my little sister started getting dreams at night, and she would wake up. She'd say, "Hey, Dad, Mom, there's a little girl that would come out in a purple dress, and she'd tell me to do things." And that's generally what happens, right? So when we look at demonic activity, from just a classic perspective, it always seems that these demonic entities always dress themselves up as kids. Because why? Because they don't seem as scary, right? And that's generally what they gain your confidence, they gain your friendship. The next thing you know, boom,
we were just talking about that.
We were just talking about that today, actually. Yeah.
Dang.
Yeah. I mean, in general, that's what happens. I mean, from my experience, that's what they do. So honestly, like, when it comes to like kids and the haunted stuff, I'm like, I don't like scary kids. You know what I mean? I don't like these kids. You know.
Well, I think even movies, when it's the kid that's haunted, it always makes it more creepier because
like
kids are supposed to be innocent. Let
me ask you this question more in general about hauntings and ghosts. And if any of you guys got questions too, go ahead and jump in at any time. But like one of the things I wanted to ask specifically, because you and we had just talked about this very topic early on today. It's kind of curious or coincidental.
It's a synchronicity.
Yeah, synchronicity. Yeah. But like we were talking about this idea. It's like, okay, so hauntings and ghosts are, these spirits, because I'm actually a believer. I go to church. I'm a Christian theist. So and we had actually on the show last season my pastor on to actually talk about the paranormal and Christian theism and how do they mix together. And one of the things that he talked to me about one time was the fact that the paranormal, in his belief, is that it's more demonic than anything, because in his spiritual tradition or his scriptural tradition, to be absent with the body is to be present with the Lord. So therefore, anything that you're seeing here is demonic. It's not the spirit, so to speak, of individuals who've passed. It's actually demonic spirits representing themselves, because there's nothing good that could possibly come from that. And I'm just asking you, it's like, do you agree with that sentiment, or is it a mixture of both spirits of people who've died and who've not moved on, or is it the demonic?
If you would have asked me this question maybe years ago, I probably would have agreed completely with the pastor. But me going to seminary school, growing up in church, growing up Christian Pentecostal, growing up Baptist, if you would have asked me like back then, I probably would have been like, yeah, but I think no. I think what ends up happening is, we all have our belief system. Yeah. And for me, and like, I would never disrespect the pastor or anything like that, but I think that's just the narrative that he's taught, or the narrative that he knows. And so generally speaking, when you ask these types of questions, the church, the Protestant church, so to speak, that are non-Catholic, they can't give you a good explanation. It's either good or bad, you know what I mean? And no in between. And from my experience, it's not that. I think what ends up happening is that for us, we need to educate the people more, especially the other churches, on how to deal with these things. Because obviously, you fear what you don't understand, and you're going to go ahead and make a general analysis that it's going to be evil all the time, which is not. I mean, you talk about the Bible, the spiritual gifts, los siete dones del Espíritu, the 7 gifts of the Spirit. I believe that people who are psychics and people who have certain abilities are gifts from God, from the Creator, so to speak. I just think it's how you want to implement them and how you want to use it. So To make a long story short, no, I don't necessarily fully agree with your pastor. I do think that there is a lack of understanding from the church in general.
Okay.
Because I tell you what, though, you go to the Catholic Church, they believe in this stuff. You know what I mean? They believe it in demonic, and obviously that stuff is out there, but it's just much more than demonic. Ultimately, at the end of the day, this is how I put it. We have free will. God gave us free will, and I personally believe that when we die, yes. If we have unfinished business, then we're not going to go anywhere because we have free will. And I think that once we feel like our life has closure towards the end, I think generally that's when the person can pass on, peacefully.
Yeah.
That's why they say in the military, even before we go on missions, make sure you get your affairs in orders.
Yep.
You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Because you don't want to go out there and be thinking about different things and not having, any closure. And so I personally believe that before we go, and sometimes it's unexpected. That's the problem. You know what I mean? We see people that die unexpectedly and suddenly, and so they're confused, and so they're still sticking around because they have no idea what's going on. And so I think it's our job to help them out. As long as you do it with respect, with love, I think you can help them cross over. And it doesn't always have to be about religion. And that's my biggest thing is just like, you put religion into the equation, and honestly, it just complicates a lot of different things because there's so many different thought systems. There's so many belief systems. You can't tell a Christian, a person who has a Christian belief, in this way, you can't handle a Christian case in California and work a Hindu case a Christian way. It doesn't work like that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It's all identified by region. It's all about region. It's all about what that person or that section of the world believes in. In my experiences, from what I've seen, there's been people that try to do a Middle Eastern exorcism and they use Jesus Christ, and they're like, who is Jesus Christ? I don't know that, because they don't identify with that.
That's curious. I'm sorry. No, I was just going to say, because I know they've been doing a lot of near-death studies, and not everybody sees the Christian God. They all see the God they worship, and that always made me wonder: if there was one true God, how come not everybody sees that one true God when they die? You know what I mean?
Yeah, and let me ask you this, though. Is God not big enough, infinite? Does he have to be labeled? That's my thing. The world is so big and infinite. That's not to say that your Allah is not my God, or whatever. It's just the world is so big. To put a label on God, I think, is an injustice.
Okay.
And I think the way you see God and I see God, if we see him differently, I think that's okay. But ultimately, at the end of the day, love, peace, harmony, respecting one another. So what I'm trying to say is that, I can believe in the same God you believe in, but you might just have a different name for him.
Yeah. So
different customs.
It would be the dogmatic assertions of the objectivity of truth is what probably you would push back against. That not one religious belief has what they would call the objective truth. That it is more subjective than what they believe it is.
Correct.
Okay.
And the Bible is a beautiful work of Scripture, and I read the Bible and I study it, but I also look at other belief systems from around the world. It's for me, it's important to educate myself.
Okay.
Because that's where we were, me and Rev, because Rev's more traditional, I guess, I'm
actually,
and I'm more
Reformed.
spiritual.
I'm a Reformed Baptist, so that's where I'm coming from. I was me and B actually grew up. Well, he's a non-church individual now.
Well, I find myself on a spiritual journey, and I told him wherever God decides to land me, I might be a Buddhist, I might be whatever.
CJ here is our resident heathen.
Well, and that's the beautiful thing, though. Look at we're coming together on this radio, on this podcast, and we're talking about our different belief systems or whatever it is, and we can find common ground.
Yeah.
And we don't always necessarily have to agree with one another, but if we find a common respect, or just can understand one another, I think that's the most important thing. And quite honestly, that's what this world is lacking. Like you, I grew up Christian Pentecostal and Baptist, and those guys are straight core, Holy Ghost fire, talking in tongues, dando vuelta around the church, corriendo, and el espíritu, running in the spirit. You know what I mean? But what I found, though, is throughout my years, man, religion breaks people, you know what I mean? But it's about your personal relationship with what you believe in and what your creator is. And as long as you follow your belief system and you read your book and you read your Quran, I think that's the most important thing. And so how that translates into the paranormal is because that better equips us to handle different things. Middle Eastern genies, jinns, for us, a jinn or a genie might be evil, but in the Middle East and Iraq, it's a neutral deity. You have elementals. I mean, we could look at the book of Enoch and we could look at all the different books like Maccabee, things that were taken out the Bible. So, and I'm not saying that the Bible is wrong. I believe in my heart that it is the wholehearted, truth and the word, the gospel of what Jesus Christ interpreted, wanted us to hear. But I think throughout the years, man has his own personal agenda. And so what ends up happening is we read the narrative wrong. And so there's different belief systems now. And that's what caused war. That's what caused different things. A lot of things were done in the name of Christianity. A lot of things are done in the name of Allah. And I'd like to think that the violence from any belief system towards a human person, that's not true love. That isn't true love. You know what I mean? And so if I'm going to follow a religious belief system, I'm going to follow Christ or whatever, I'm going to do it with love. I'm going to do it with passion. I'm going to respect one another. You know what I mean? That's just how it should be.
So you think that all ghosts are human people passed on and coming back with unfinished business, or can some of them be demonic as well?
Well, so I think,
or are they like the Nephilim? How the Nephilim were tricksters and whatnot.
Well, that's an interesting story too. Yeah, because then we're going to get into the work of Zachariah Sitchin, and then we're going to talk about the Anunnaki. That's a different topic itself within the Anunnaki, because you talk about Genesis in the Bible, it says that there were giants. God's sons were on Earth, but I don't necessarily believe that all ghosts. Well, I'll put it this way: I think that there are ghosts that are trapped here by inhuman spirits, and they just need help getting away. And I like to think that human spirits too. They have their will, they have a free will, and so I think it's our job to help them cross over. And as far as inhuman spirits, inhuman spirits are obviously entities that have never walked to Earth, and I do think that they can disguise themselves as human spirits. You know what I mean? They have that advantage. They have that ability. So
yeah. Well, there's a lot of information that we're diving into, and I'm like, this is really great, and I know that we're not going to be able to cover everything in the amount of time that we've slotted for this, but I wanted to talk a couple more things, maybe a little off topic here, because so far I am so interested and intrigued just by everything you've been saying that I kind of want to continue down that thought process, but I kind of want to back up because there's so many interesting tidbits that you've already released about you and your life that I'm like, I want to ask a couple more questions. And I think mainly because, and this is just something off the paranormal topic here, because B and I last season, we talked to another individual who happened to be from the East Coast, who was Puerto Rican.
Oh, yeah.
And it was really interesting because we were going back, because he moved from actually Florida and then moved to California. And it was really interesting, how he was just in culture shock coming from the East Coast. Even though it's Hispanic, it's not the same thing as California. So how long have you been in California, and how was it for you adjusting coming from a Boricua and then...
So, I got to the West Coast in 2003 when I joined the Marine Corps. Then 2006, I went back to the East. And then, at that time, I'm married and divorced. I fell in love with the Salvadoran and the Cuban, you know what I mean? I met her while I was on leave, and it was a decent relationship. We were together. We were married for 14 years, together for 7. We just finally got divorced last year. It was pretty nasty divorce, but, luckily, I wish her the best. Nothing came out of it. We just went our mutual ways. But it was different. A little bit of culture shock for me. I remember seeing palm trees in Puerto Rico, but when I got to San Diego, I was like, wow, these are nice palm trees. Yeah, it was nice. It was nice. And for me, I kind of acclimated really quick, to the SoCal life. But when I got to NorCal back in 2007, 2008, it was different, to be honest, man. Yeah. I was treated a little bad, you know what I mean? I started working with with the Mexicans in the field, and I was an iron worker and all that stuff. And, I remember the first thing, they're like, what was the joke? What was it? Eres güey? And I was like, what? they're like, it is great. And I go, no, I don't want anything. And I guess, they were talking trash about me. And I was like, what is that? And so I didn't really remember what that word was, because my Spanish is like, in and out. And I'm like, whatever. And but for the most part, even to this day, people say gringuito and they're like, oh man, you don't look Spanish, you don't look Puerto Rican. And I go, what's the Puerto Rican supposed to look like? Yeah. And my blood is like, obviously you do the whole DNA thing. My family comes from Iberia.
Oh yeah, yeah.
My great grandfathers were Sicilian and Italian mobsters that moved to Puerto Rico. They picked up a Puerto Rican lady. Yeah. You know what I mean? So both my grandfathers, my grandfather used to own a barber shop in the front and a casino in the back in New York.
Nice.
That's
and then my other, and so it's just a whole mixture of Italian and Puerto Rican. But
it's a good mix.
It's a good mix, because we're Spanish from Spain. But the culture shock, man, it was a little different. It was the first time I met a chola when I was in LA. And I was like, I saw like Princess A, like quinceañera this and quinceañera that. And I was like, okay, cool, but I fell in love with the chola, yo. That's what it was,
because it was exotic to you.
It was exotic.
Right.
It was exotic. Then,
there's nothing like making love to a woman and getting your TV stolen at the same time.
Pretty much, right? Pretty much, man. She's like, you got to mark yourself for me, you know what I mean? 13 or 14. I don't know.
Got to walk blood and blood out.
Yeah, I could count past that.
You're writing down. And the funny thing is, like, I was a government contractor at the time, so I had some adjustments coming out the military, and my first job, like I said, my first year was like 13 jobs. Had a hard job, had a hard time. And so like around 2008, it was good. It was settled. I was a government contractor. I was working counterterrorism with the Federal Air Marshals, working Sacramento. I was working transit system. But it was so funny because you see this government contracting deal, and then all of a sudden, my wife, Ruka, rolls up, and there's a bluebird on my shoulder. Can I kill it?
Yeah. So RBL posse, that takes me back right there.
No, I'm telling you, man, I want to get lost in love with you.
I'm singing oldies.
Yeah. So and they're like, hey, Torres, is that your suspect? I go, no, fool, that's my wife.
Yeah.
But no, man, it was good times and bad times. Unfortunately, it didn't work out. We ended up losing our daughter at 6 months.
And, man, sorry to hear that, bro.
So that was kind of the catalyst for the relationship to fall apart. And I got in trouble with the law. Finally, some stuff happened, and I got arrested at work at the federal building and all that stuff. Man. And but this just goes to show that it's all about that veteran mentality, that mental health. Although I still had, a government job, I was still struggling with different things. There was different things in the background that were going on. And,
yeah, and that's another thing, because I find your story, I mean, even more interesting than what I heard when you were having that conversation with Heather last week. And that's what sparked me. Like, I want to talk to this guy. This guy seems like very interesting. Was your Christian background, because you're going for your seminary degree. You do go to church. You do have conversations with your pastor. And another thing, which I do want to unpack that more, but I know we're limited on time today, and I hope that we would have you back so we could.
Oh yeah.
Oh, great. So another thing I wanted to talk about really quick, because I wanted to have my wife on with me tonight, but unfortunately she couldn't make it because she had called in for work last minute.
Okay.
I learned a lot. I'm not a veteran. I didn't serve. My wife served. Her prior husband served and was killed in action in 2009. And just learning about all of the hardships and the emotional turmoil that service people go through when they transition from service to civilian life, and that the suicide rate amongst veterans is at an all-time high. I think it's 22 every
22 every day. 22 every day.
22 every day, and I'm just like, and it's like, in your field, how do you because you do a lot of work with the veterans programs, which like what you said at the top of the show. So it's like, how do you then use your tradition, religious beliefs, and then your practice in the paranormal investigation to help you with that, and how you use those things to then help other veterans that you come across in your work?
Well, compassion and love and understanding. Me reading the Bible and going to seminary, for me, I'm just learning the narrative of the Bible. I think that as a Christian, though, I grew up in a really bad narrative in church. It was either, heaven or hell. You better go to church. You better pray and all that. But it was never really, but it was never really about the actual love of it. You know what I mean? The actual love of Christ. It was always a narrative that if you don't go to church, you're going to go to hell. If you don't give your tithings, you're going to go to hell.
Oh, yeah, we've heard that one.
And if you don't pray and read the Bible, you're going to go to hell. Well, the whole thing is, the narrative of the old church is they were always pushing anger. When in reality, when you talk about it, when you look at Jesus, the Jesus that God knew is the God that the God that Jesus knew is the God I want to know, so to speak. Because Jesus never in the Bible correlated any punishment, along with being a Christian or with that correlating to God. And there's a book that I'm reading. It's called The Good and Beautiful God. And so if anybody is out there and they're Christian and they want to read it, I would highly recommend that book, because the reason why it ties into the paranormal, because it gives you a better understanding of how loving, our belief system is, how loving, Christ can be. And so with that, I think that it gives me the opportunity to be more open-minded and to be more positive and be more susceptible to other people's feelings. And I guess kind of understand, give more of an understanding. And I think that's what we need. A lot of the old school church that I grew up with, a lot of it was misunderstanding. A lot of it was forced in nature, and it was all about anger and a wrathful God. And so what I'm learning is that there are people out there that need help. They're God's children. No matter what you believe in, God or whoever or Allah, there are people out there that need help. And so it doesn't matter what kind of belief system you have. Yeah. You can genuinely go out there and help people. You know what I mean? Yeah. My thing is just like, why do you have to tie in religion? You can still have a personal relationship with your belief system and your creator and still go out there and help people. Look at the Navajo. The Navajo talk about the skinwalkers. You know what I mean? They have the skinwalker. You know what I mean? And that's something that is just like, they actually have their own police department dedicated to that, but they also believe in the creator. And that doesn't really tie in with the religion. There's nothing saying that just because I'm a Christian, I can't help out people in the paranormal field. Yeah. I think you have to be more open-minded. Once you have a linear way of thinking, I think that's what's going to affect you in this field. You know what I mean? Yeah. You have to be positive. You have to be more open-minded and susceptible to learn different things.
Yeah. You have to have a dynamic way of looking at the world, and then not just this bind this. Yeah, I see what you mean. I wanted to do one last thing, because I don't know if you guys had any questions, because we got about 5 minutes. So I don't know if there's anything questions that you guys have, because I don't want to I know I've asked a lot of questions.
No. Actually, I'm just a big proponent of the mental health, and I'm glad it got brought up. And I'm a big proponent of people asking for help any way they can, whether it be speaking to someone they're comfortable with or seeking outside help. I mean, I think that's always a plus, and it's admirable what you're doing here for the veterans, because it got to be hard to transition. You spend all this time learning to be a soldier, and there's no training to become a civilian. Yep. So I think therein is the problem. But what you're doing is very commendable, man, and I thank you for your service in that way as well. That's very awesome.
I appreciate that, man. I appreciate that, but we should be thanking the ones that never made it back. Yeah. The only thing I can do is just honor them to live my life and just continue moving forward. And quite honestly, a lot of this stuff it helps me out, man. It gives me a peace of mind. It gives me the opportunity to help out different people, veterans in general. But in so regards to the paranormal, because I've seen some stuff, I've experienced some stuff, and I think those are tools that will allow people. At least for me, I'd like a person who has like an interesting background to kind of help me out. The general consensus is that, everybody's an expert in this field, and that's not true. I don't think there's any experts in the paranormal field. And if you think you're an expert, you probably aren't. My biggest thing is, just because you've had a TV show doesn't mean anything. just because you've written a book, it doesn't mean shit, man. You know what I mean? And that's the biggest thing. And that's what I like about the Warren Legacy Foundation is, we're just all cohesive. And then I was going to finish that story real quick.
Go ahead.
Going back to my sister real quick. So it turns out that there was a little girl in a dress coming out at night, and it started scratching her. So to make a long story short, we had a pastor come over, pray for the house. There was a loud scream. Maybe about a month later, we found a little cubby hole, and in that cubby hole, the tenants before us, they put some stuff in there. And when we opened it up, there were pictures of naked kids in dirty underwear.
Shit.
No.
So
way,
the people,
man.
the people that lived there before us, they were pedophiles and sex traffickers.
This is disgusting, dude.
And so the people but the people that lived downstairs, though, they were satanic worshipers as well. So I think that whatever they were doing downstairs kind of just made it worse for the people upstairs. And so anyway, yeah, I mean, that's to make a long story short. So, and so, you know, you've got that correlation between demonic entities and these things happening. And from what my dad told me, from when I remember, yeah, the police got them people and they arrested them and they put them in jail. They were sex trafficking, you know, they were pedophiles. And so that's when I knew that ultimately, at the end of the day, no matter what I was going to do in my life, that there was something out there bigger than myself. And I knew the church didn't have the answers that I needed. Mm-hmm. And so that's why I got into the paranormal.
Okay. Well, that's really interesting. Is there anything?
I have a lot to say after that statement, but I don't think we have enough time.
Okay. Well, and like I said, there's so much. Like I am.
Dude, this stuff is thick. This is deep water.
This is a series in and of itself.
This has been 16 more episodes.
This has been one of the most in-depth interviews I think we've done since we started this program. And I am the questions are just starting to pour out of my mind, and I'm hesitant to even start because I know that they're not going to get finished. And we actually haven't even fully touched on all the things that you even talked about today. So
no,
and I appreciate, and we're going to book you back on for another segment to talk about this because everything you've mentioned, every single statement you made today is valuable and incredibly important for everybody to hear. And I really want to literally flesh out all those things that are really interesting. I mean, we barely even touched on the.
I'm still curious about the river in the living room.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Like, was the water cold? Did you drink it? Like, how's that?
Well, you know, and see, that's the thing too. You know, being at that young age, that could have been a psychoactive imagination because of the trauma that I've suffered.
Yeah,
you know
no, and that's another. Okay, that's a lot to get in. I mean, I wanted to even get
or
more
the magician who created that is just beyond powerful.
Yeah,
I mean, if there was noise, sound, like, was there noise? Was there sound?
There was noise. There was sound. I mean, and there were days that I would wake up with my aunt and we'd walk in and we'd be in the room and we're in a fucking forest.
Yeah, that's a person you do not.
That's pretty badass.
Well, that's what I mean, though. You know, so when you compact everything, look, religion in itself, religion in itself. I'll close with this. Religion in itself is just a small portion of our existence. There are things out there that we don't understand and that we can't fully comprehend. The universe is so big and it's so vast, you know, and I'm not trying to offend anybody. If I've offended any of the viewers, I do apologize. It's not my intent. You know, I'm just trying to give the viewers my understanding of what I've experienced.
Right.
But if the viewers have something else to say, hey, you know what? I'd love to learn. That's what it's all about. It's all about learning. It's never my intent to offend anybody. But these are my experiences. You know what I mean? This is what I've gone through. This is what I've seen. But I mean, there's just so much more.
Yeah. Well,
that's awesome.
I just want to just off the bat, just thank you very much for everything that you said and for coming on the program and talking with us and sharing. And like I said, I do want to hear more in the future about the work with the Warren Legacy Foundation. I mean, even more about the Warrens themselves. I think that would be really, really cool. And even the grants. And I think I've actually been in communications with him. And hopefully we'll have him on too and to talk more about that. But Kenneth, thank you very much for coming on. If people want to reach out to you or they want to get in contact with you, what's the best way they can do that if they're looking for services and some of the things that you've talked about?
So, I mean, you can always reach out to the Warren Legacy Foundation.com. You can either do Torres at warrenlegacy.com, or you can reach me at my group called Paranormal Connection. It's purple page with, you know, a Ouija board symbol on it. You know, that's how it gets people's attention.
Yeah.
And then, I mean, you can also share, you know, my profile if you can on here. So,
and that profile is on Facebook? Or,
yeah.
Okay, yeah, no, definitely. Yeah. We'll put that up on there. We'll have in the description below and everything. But thank you again, Kenneth. I want to thank B for joining us again, and also our special co-host for the evening, who was probably more just observing.
No, dude, this stuff is so fascinating.
Yeah.
Like, why am I going to talk over someone who's going to give us so much information?
I didn't say nothing much either. I'm just I should have made some popcorn. I'm like
I've spoken over teachers so many times because they're all stupid, but this guy is just like information after information.
Yeah, and there's so much more to come. So Kenny, thank you very much.
No problem
for coming on. Again, you've just entered the TAP. Now you have been tagged.